This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for June 3rd. It is now called to order. I'm Jim Castema, the mayor. If you'd all like to rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. It's good seeing everyone here this evening. With that, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Adler?
Present.
Councilmember Dorr?
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Present.
Councilmember Johnson?
Present.
Councilmember Whitting?
Present.
Deputy Mayor King?
Present.
Mayor Castema.
Present. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge, as we do every single meeting, we acknowledge the youth in the audience, and I can see we have some candidates today out there. What I'd like to do is, if you would like to, the younger members of the audience, if you want to stand up, say who you are, what school you go to, and maybe the reason you're here this evening. All the attention is on you. So if you'd like to. You just can stand up where you're at.
Just stand up. Just stand up. You don't have to.
Okay, that's fine. I really understand that. I do want you to know, and all of you, the younger individuals we have here in our audience, is that you are future leaders. And I acknowledge you, and we always acknowledge you at the beginning of every meeting. We hope that we prove to be the kind of leaders you would like to someday come up here and sit on the dais and also lead the community. So thank you for being here. You're always welcome, and I wish you the best in your schooling, etc., and success in life. And again, hope to see you up here on the dais one of these days. So with that, I'd like to move to item number 1, which is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion that approves the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Number 2 on the agenda is consideration of minutes. And we have the approval of the May 13th, 2025 amendments. Do I have a motion to approve?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve.
Okay, I will take that as a
Second.
double motion and a second. Thank you. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We're now going to move on to proclamations or presentations and proclamations. We have 2 this evening. The first one is the LGBTQIA+ proclamation, and I believe this is about the 4th year City of Puyallup has done this. So with that, I will read that. Whereas the City of Puyallup acknowledges and takes pride in the diversity of our populace, and whereas the City of Puyallup is a welcoming and inclusive community for individuals and couples of all sexual orientations and gender identities, and whereas important rights have been established for the LGBTQIA community, including Supreme Court decisions that establish the right for same-sex couples to marry in all 50 states of America, and that the protections provided by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 extend to the LGBTQIA+ individuals. And whereas the promise of America is that all people should be able to live with dignity, have equal rights under the law. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City Council that we recognize June 2025 as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in the City of Puyallup, and call upon all citizens to celebrate the diversity of our community and demonstrate acceptance for all persons. I witness whereof I, Mayor Jim Castema, have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this 3rd day of June 2025. Now, usually I believe, Kim, I present this to you, but if any other. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going up there and hope to meet you all there.
Yep. Yeah, everyone should come up. Everyone should.
Chief Ingalls, can you remove Hopkins, the heckler? All right. So I'm actually going to talk about two things because they're both very community oriented. First of all, good evening, council members. Tonight I want to talk to you about a couple of things. Number one, some community events that are happening. Not only do we have the Pride event happening the last weekend in July, we have some amazing events happening this month. As you all know, I own a run company. And our job is to put people in this community and spread joy. So please come and join us on June 29th at the Lazy Ballerina. We're down here on a Sunday morning when nobody's downtown. And when she's trying to kick off her Sunday summers on the patio and nobody's down there, it's really kind of a bleak economic picture for them. So we're going to do this 5K. We're going to have people, and we're really going to bring a lot of fun to the downtown Puyallup core. Second, some of us don't go away for 4th of July, so we want to invite you to Red, White, Kaboom. There are partners with the Puyallup Sumner Chamber. It's over at the Teal Lot. Again, another amazing 5K. But not only that, we have music, we have food trucks, we have a beer garden, we have kids zone, we have the Great 5K, and we have fireworks at 10. Nobody else in Pierce County has this event. So I really just want to encourage everything because that really showcases all things fun sports commitment to the Puyallup community. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Pride. I want to thank you all for recognizing Pride. It is so important and it is so nice to see our community support our community because it's a rough community to be in sometimes. So you've heard the old adage, walk a mile in my shoes. That's pretty simple to do, really. I mean, because who am I? I'm a partner, I'm a business owner, I was somebody's daughter, my parents have passed, I'm somebody's sibling, just like everyone. And we're all voters, too, in this community. So it's really easy to walk a mile in our shoes. What's harder? Spend 30 seconds in our head and hear what we hear. And there's something going on around the internet, and I've seen it a few times, and a lot of people have reposted it. There is still people in this community who believe they are better off dead than being gay. And that is the saddest thing you could ever see or hear. Last year, a young lady came and spoke. She's a transgender youth. And you know what? She was the epitome of what Puyallup, land of generous people, stood for. She fled Utah in fear of her life, and she came to the Puyallup community because it was safe. So again, I stand before you humble and grateful, and I wish you a very productive council meeting and a good evening. And most importantly, happy Pride.
Thank you. Okay, the second proclamation that we're going to read this evening was one that was actually presented on Saturday at a ceremony in front of the Meeker Mansion, and that was for the Daughters of the American Revolution. And they have a branch with Eliza Meeker there at that location. So this proclamation was already presented at that time, but obviously it'll be formally adopted today. And with that, I'll proceed. Whereas, and the subject matter here is the Daughters of the American Revolution, their new chapter that they are starting at the Meeker Mansion here in Puyallup. Whereas on July 4th, 2026, our nation will commemorate the semi-quincentennial anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and we are on the eve of this great commemoration. Whereas the journey toward this historic milestone is an opportunity to reflect on our nation's past, honor the contributions of all Americans, and look ahead to the future generations who will carry forward the ideals of democracy and individual liberty that make the United States a unique nation in the world community. And whereas the great state of Washington was established in 1889 as the 42nd state in the United States, with Puyallup, Washington officially incorporating in 1890. And whereas the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, DAR is the acronym, is a non-political women's service organization established in 1890, whose members are lineally descended from patriots of the American Revolution. And whereas through the DAR President General's leadership, all daughters are spending 3 years celebrating Stars and Stripes Forever and rejoicing in the Daughters of the American Revolution ties of service and friendship by celebrating our nation's rich history and diversity, promoting belonging through membership and dedicated service to God, home, and country, and by completing projects in unique, local, and impactful ways. Whereas the Daughters of the American Revolution, Eliza Jane Meeker chapter participated in the creation and installation and dedication of the Revolutionary War Patriots, an American 250 Patriot marker in the honor of the semi-quincentennial supported by the state DAR's Riddell's administration of 2026, Whereas the marker inscription reads, Revolutionary War Patriots. This marker commemorates the men and women who achieved America's independence. These patriots, believing in the noble cause of liberty, fought valiantly to find a new nation. In 1775 to 1783, presented by Eliza Jane Meeker chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, in honor of the 250th anniversary of the United States. The reason for this proclamation now therefore be it that the Revolutionary War Patriots marker has been installed and will be dedicated in a ceremony to be held at the Meeker Mansion that was already held at the Meeker Mansion on May 31st, 2025, 312 Spring Street, Puyallup, Washington. Resolved that I, Jim Castema, Mayor of the City of Puyallup, and the City Council commend this commemoration to all Puyallup residents and urge them to join in learning more about the beginnings of our great nation and celebrate and promote patriotism. I witness whereof I, Mayor Jim Castema, have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this 3rd day of June, 2025. Now, I don't believe anyone is here this evening to receive this. It was quite a well-attended ceremony that took place on Saturday, and I think probably everybody's resting up from that. But I will assure them that it was officially read and adopted by the City Council. So with that, we're now going to move on to citizen comments. Could I have the Chief Clerk please read the guidelines for the citizen comments?
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Thank you. I will go ahead and I will name the individuals in order that they submitted this form. Keep in mind that I am pretty stringent about the time, and don't take it personally, please. It's just that I have to treat everybody fairly and the same. And it's the way that I do that is I'm pretty abrupt at your 3-minute mark, so try to aim for that. Now, the first person I have is Kim Field, but Kim, I'm good. You're good. Okay, good. I like to hear that. Okay, second person is John Hopkins.
Members of the council, Mayor Castema, John Hopkins District 1. Not quite sure what I'm going to say because I'm a little confused as to one of the ordinances. There are a couple of options shown on it. They look to me like carve-outs. The basic ordinance looks really good. It looks like it's the temporary adoption of higher density housing, the middle housing that we talked about before, and the ADUs. I think those are good items, especially for an age-friendly city. The options got me a bit confused. The first one, is pretty self-explanatory, actually, and that is in regard to sensitive properties, critical areas. It's pretty obvious that we shouldn't increase density in those. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to build more housing in flood-prone areas, does it? We pay a lot of money in taxes, to deal with those issues. Plus, on top of that, we have higher insurance rates when properties get flooded. So that one's self-explanatory. Even if you're not an environmentalist, it should be obvious that that needs to be adopted in one way, shape, or form. The other one had me a little puzzled because I wasn't sure of the details. It talks about earthquakes, hazard areas, seismic-prone type properties. What are we talking about here? We get earthquakes all the time, so you can't really carve it out based upon earthquakes. Everyone's got earthquakes in Washington. What about Lahars? Is that where this thing is leading towards? So if it's Lahars and property that's built on Lahars, what are we talking about there? Are we talking about District 1? Because the Lahars don't exactly go up to District 3, that much I can tell you. So, like I said, I'm a bit puzzled by the whole thing. I will comment that as a person who just loves geology, that Lahars are kind of rare. So to carve out the entire District 1 based upon Lahars, an event that happens, how many years? 1,000, 10,000? Pretty rare. So that's all I got to say on that one. I await your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Cassandra Schwartz.
Hello, Mayor and council members. I will be speaking today on behalf of Penny Salm of District 2. I want to begin by thanking you for issuing the Pride Month proclamation. Words matter, and that proclamation is a meaningful step in recognizing and affirming the LGBTQIA+ community in our city. But now it's time to match those words with visible action. Raising the Pride flag is more than a gesture. It's a symbol of safety, visibility, and belonging. When young LGBTQ+ people see their city fly the Pride flag, it tells them that they are not alone, that they are seen, and that they are valued members of this community. For many, that can be life-changing. For myself, not speaking on behalf of Penny, when I first moved to Puyallup, I was worried. I was moving to an area that is considered more conservative, and I am part of the queer community. The very first day I went to Fred Meyer and I happened to have a checkout person that was wearing Pride rainbow glasses, I instantly felt safer. Imagine what having a flag could do. The same goes for the Juneteenth flag. While we honor Juneteenth as a pivotal moment in our nation's history, the formal end of slavery, we must also acknowledge the ongoing struggles for justice, equality, and representation in the Black community. Flying the Juneteenth flag signals that we not only remember history, but we are committed to progress. A proclamation is a promise. It says, we see you, we support you, and we stand with you. Now it's time to take that promise and make it public, literally. Raise the Pride flag, raise the Juneteenth flag. Let our city be a place that shows that it doesn't just talk about inclusion, but it shows it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. That concludes the individuals who have filled out this form. However, it's up to the discretion of the mayor to open it up to individuals who would like to come forward. You have 3 minutes, like everyone else. Yes, certainly, ma'am. Go ahead. Just tell us your name and what district you're from, your address. If you don't know the district, is fine.
I'm Reverend Sarah Almanza. I live at 316 7th Avenue Northwest. I'm the pastor at FC's First Christian Church, Puyallup, where we welcome, affirm, and love. We are the home of the Transparent Closet, which provides clothing for queer and transgender folk, and it is a delight to be able to provide that service. I have the privilege to be part of so many vulnerable conversations where people say, I didn't know a church like this exists. I have heard in those same conversations fear and worry and pain about their safety in everyday life. Things like the Pride Proclamation are life-giving. It is life-saving work, using these words to affirm people who deserve to be affirmed for who they are. So I want to thank you for the proclamation, for the Pride Proclamation, and caring for a population that deserves to be celebrated. Thank you for this life-saving work, and may all people know that they are welcomed, they are affirmed and loved just as they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrelyn Izquierdo. Now,
Yes.
oh, good. I hope I got that right. I apologize.
That's okay. Is this up for the comments?
Yes, it is. 3 minutes.
All right.
If there's, do you want to come forward now?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Just had to grab my paper. Thank you very much.
Oh, Andrelyn, if you could also state what district you're from or the address, whichever, some people don't know what their district is.
I'm still working on that. I'm working on out of districts, I guess you can say a letter writing campaign also with between you guys and also Pierce County Council. So I don't necessarily know right now.
Okay, if you, just as a note,
Sure.
The clock hasn't started. Dan, if you could stop that. Dan will take your address and he'll tell you after
Sure,
the
sure.
meeting. Just so you know where you make the biggest impact.
Yeah, no problem.
Might as
Thank
well
you
know
very
that.
much.
Okay, please go ahead and proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Angelina Izquierdo. And I'm here to speak to you today about choosing not to fund the Designated Crisis Responders Program anymore for the Puyallup Police Department and the Good Samaritan Hospital. As I had mentioned beforehand, in the past couple of months, it is a program that relies heavily on the subjectivity of the police officers and medical professionals when determining the mental illnesses of people they choose to involuntarily add to their program. I had experience with this program for another department many years ago, and then it went into a downward spiral of sexism, racism, sexual assault, and much more. The entire process was completely unfair and meant to silence me while others were allowed to speak for me who did not have my permission and I did not know. It also proved to others that the event added to my sexual assault experiences, portraying me as a victim and survivor. As an American citizen, it is my constitutional right to be able to speak up for myself, especially in the case of emergencies of danger headed in my direction. There is no comfort in an involuntary program when inserted into it without having my voice heard and under false pretenses. The way things were handled did not leave room for me to defend myself, and no documents were thoroughly filled out with accurate record of events. The police filled out a form with only a few words jotted down on it that the rest of the lineup said that they had to follow those words, even though there was no details included. It was just a few words on a piece of yellow paper. The other medical professionals didn't know what to do most of the time and were running around like a chicken with their heads cut off. The doctors also filled out paperwork without having a sit down with me as well, which is really doesn't follow protocol. So the entire operation was just an unorganized mess, and this makes it extra difficult to prove when a complainant, medical professional, and or law enforcement officers lying too. We need a process that respects our rights and allows fairness to be inserted in any area possible. So I ask of you today, council members, that you say nay to your decision to further fund the DCR program until further humane practices have been instilled within all involved parties' training modules and annual trainings. Thank you for letting me speak today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrelyn. Again, if you could, just so that, again, I want your words to be as impactful as they can.
Yes.
If you could get with Dan with your address, he'll tell you, which particular elected official has jurisdiction over your particular area. I think that's the best method. But anyway, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you very much.
Good seeing you. Okay, with that, we're now going to move on to the consent agenda. If I do not see anyone else wishing to talk. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. This is item number 4 on the agenda, if you're following that. It is where we take a number of issues and we may have one vote for all of them. And they are really pretty easy issues that everyone has agreed to. Having said that, is there any member on the council would like to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda and placed on a further point on the agenda? Hearing none, I look for a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Let's move on to number 5. We have a lot of votes to make this evening. It's under ordinances. 5A is a first reading of an interim zoning ordinance amending Title 20 Puyallup Municipal Code to address middle housing in compliance with House Bill 1110. Katie, Senior Planner, if you could apprise us of the makings of this.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Katie Baker in the Planning Division. So as introduced, I will be giving you a brief presentation on this first ordinance reading tonight. This is an interim zoning that we're requesting council take action on so that we can get compliant middle housing regulations in place prior to the June 30th deadline, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So just a brief overview, I'll go through what the legislative requirements are, briefly touch on what middle housing is and how, and our current zoning allowances for middle housing, go through what the interim ordinance would implement, a couple of options for your consideration tonight, and then the timeline and next steps. So first, House Bill 1110 was adopted in 2023. The legislative findings concluded that the state had a statewide lack of housing choices. There was a need for housing at all income levels of the spectrum, and that by design of higher density housing, it tends to be more relatively affordable. So with that in mind, House Bill 1110 requires cities to allow middle housing in all of their predominantly residential zones, both existing single-family zones as well as multifamily. These requirements must be adopted by June 30th. If city does not adopt legislation in compliance with these requirements, there is a state model ordinance that will apply. There was also a follow-up legislation, House Bill 2321, last year in 2024. This just made some minor modifications to some of the requirements and amended and clarified definitions. So we've taken both of those into account with the ordinance before you tonight. So first, very briefly, you've heard many presentations from me, but for the benefit of the public, what is middle housing? These are buildings that are complementary in scale and form with single-family homes. So we're not talking big apartment complexes. These are usually fairly size-limited structures that contain 2 or more attached, stacked, or clustered homes. There are 9 different middle housing types listed on the slide here. Those are the named middle housing types in the legislation. And cities are required to adopt 6 of these 9 housing types, and these range from 2 to 6 units in size. So the key requirements from the legislation that apply to a city of our size are that we're required to allow for 2 middle housing units per lot. In certain areas, within a quarter mile of a major transit stop, which for us is the Sounder Station downtown, we have to allow up to 4 units per lot. And then there's also an affordability component. So if a developer proposes a development where one of the units at least is designated as an affordable unit, and that's specifically spelled out in the legislation, what constitutes an affordable unit, then they can have up to 4 units on that lot. As I mentioned, we do need to allow at least 6 of the 9 middle housing types. And then there are also some parameters around development standards. So we can't have standards that are more restrictive than single-family standards, and we have to utilize the same permit and environmental review processes. So our current zoning allowances do allow for some middle housing in our RS zones. Those are our primarily single-family zones. We allow for attached and detached accessory dwelling units in all RS zones. In 2 of the RS zones, RS4 and RS6, we allow for duplexes and triplexes outright. In the RS8 zone, we allow for duplexes as a conditionally permitted use. So that does have an additional public notice and hearing examiner requirement, but there are some properties that have utilized that process. And in all zones except RS35, we do allow for cottage housing as well. And then all of these middle housing types are already permitted in our multifamily zones. So there's really no changes there that are necessary. So the interim zoning regulations before you tonight, I'll briefly highlight what those changes would allow. It establishes that 2 middle housing units per lot are allowed in all RS zones, and that we comply with allowing up to 4 units within a quarter mile of the sounder station, or if 1 unit is affordable. We have listed that the 6 middle housing types allowed would be duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. Of course, those higher unit plexes would only be allowed within proximity of the sounder station or with the affordable bonus. Stacked flats, which is where you would have 1 full unit on top of another one in a building. So actually the picture on the left-hand side on this slide is an example of a stacked unit. Townhouses and cottage housing. We also have some clarifying regulations in terms of the review process. No conditional use permit or additional land use review would be required. These would be permitted outright through a building permit process. We would do design review and evaluate compliance with our development standards through that building permit review. And any design standards that would be applied would need to be objective design standards. And so we're proposing that developments with 2 to 4 units would fall under our existing duplex and triplex design standards, and that cottage housing would meet the objective standards of our existing cottage housing zoning regulations. So as much as possible with this interim ordinance, we're trying to utilize what we have in the code already and apply that where it's allowed and where it makes sense. And finally, I wanted to touch on the parking requirements. So parking requirements are, I should say, off-street parking is not required within half a mile of the sounder station. So that is the map on the screen in front of you, and I apologize. I realized I used a slightly incorrect map on this slide. So this does show the half-mile walk shed, but we actually have a more up-to-date map that where that buffer follows typical street lines and block lengths. So I do apologize. I had that in my presentation last time, but mistakenly replaced that. For lots less than 6,000 square feet, 1 parking space would be required per unit, and for lots greater than 6,000 square feet, 2 parking spaces per unit can be required. And so those are the parking requirements that have been included in this interim ordinance. As I mentioned, there are a couple of options, or really kind of 2 options related to critical areas for your consideration in the ordinance. The legislation does allow for an exception to the application of middle housing to lots that contain critical areas. The kind of practical application of this allowance would be that lots with wetlands, streams, or steep slopes, in those areas we would not allow for middle housing to be developed, just as we currently would not allow for single family or other multifamily housing to be developed on a wetland. Option B for your consideration is is that critical area exception plus a more limited implementation. That would also apply the exception specifically to volcanic hazard areas, which includes Case 1 and Case 2 lahars as defined in our existing critical areas ordinance. We do specify in this interim zoning ordinance that within that volcanic hazard area, our current middle housing regulations, so what we already have on the books in our RS zones, that would still apply. So those allowances I went through previously, where we have some allowances for duplexes and triplexes and duplexes through a conditional use permit in some zones, that would still apply as the draft for your consideration is written. So very briefly, we're asking for council's consideration of first reading of the ordinance tonight with direction on option A or option B as it relates to critical areas. We would anticipate coming back for second reading June 17th. And then we are required to have a public hearing on this interim zoning ordinance. We would anticipate that July 1st. Following adoption of this interim ordinance, this would be adopted for 6 months to start. We would need to come back to you for any extensions of that. We would work on developing our permanent ordinance and permanent regulations. Through that process, we would do community engagement, go through the Planning Commission for their review, and bring you a final ordinance for your consideration and adoption. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Katie, I just want to make sure I understand correctly. So let's just say the council entertains the adoption of this at first reading. If I understand correctly, the way that it's written now, would the application of this middle housing kind of expansion be restricted for those lots that are located within the volcanic lahar hazard area? Is that how this is written now?
If the ordinance is adopted in its entirety as written, yes, that would include both options A and option B,
okay,
which would restrict that.
Yeah. So I've been giving this some thought, and I do think this is clearly a public safety issue. If it's truly a public safety issue, then I'm wondering how consistent do we across the board make sure that that's the reason behind it. I'd like to make a motion to approve this item number 5A in your ordinance, the first reading of an interim zoning ordinance amending the Puyallup 20 municipal code to address middle housing in compliance with HB 1110, but it would also include options A and B as listed in here for council consideration, and that'd be my motion.
Okay, a motion is on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Johnson, you made the motion, so you can speak.
Yeah. I support this as recommended and seconded, and hopefully for passing. I do think I'd like to offer Mr. Mayor and Council a consideration for an amendment to this specific ordinance motion. Would it be appropriate to list my amendment now, Mr. Mayor, for consideration, and then we would tackle one at a time, or how would you like to do this?
Councilmember Johnson, if you put amendment before us now, it will be on the previous motion that you made, and that is completely in order. So make the motion, and we will discuss this new amendment, We will vote on that and then proceed to the underlying motion. Assuming there's no further amendments, we will go to a vote eventually, but other amendments are applicable at that time. So if you have an amendment, please make it now.
I'd like to make an amendment for consideration. I'd like to make an amendment specifically to the option B of the volcanic hazard area, that this would be applicable as mentioned in option B, but it would exempt all lots that are located within a half a mile from the base of the surrounding elevation within the Puyallup Valley floor. And so that would be my motion to exempt those properties that are within a half a mile at the base of any surrounding elevation within the Puyallup floor, they would be exempt from that restriction.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Councilmember Johnson, go ahead and explain the amendment, please.
Yeah, thank you. So I believe that the Lahar issue is a safety issue. And as I began to think about our city, the way that it's laid out, we're kind of a very concentrated city with the Puyallup Valley floor. But when you look around us, there's a lot of hillsides around us that is fairly close. So my thinking was, well, if it's a public safety issue in terms of escape and trying to, God forbid, have to escape, you know, those that are closest to, even though that's the Puyallup Valley Lahar zone, if they're within a very short distance to be able to walk with all these sirens and warning systems that we have, if they could reasonably and safely make it to an elevation, then perhaps these stringent applications would not be consistent with our intent of public safety. As I began to look at certain sections within District 2 and 3, and then maybe some portions of 1, you know, our hillside is very, very close. And so I think that also includes consistency, that we are also exempting, as I understand, Mr. Mayor, if I'm correct, we're already exempting main arterials, is that correct?
There is no exemptions to those, but
main arterials are allowed.
Our
right?
strategy has been to place development
in main arterials.
High density development on main arterials, certainly for easy evacuation.
So this would add kind of, in a sense, lack of a better word, kind of a safety belt of proximity within a half a mile that could easily walk to a higher elevation in a consistent, safe manner. So that was my reasoning upon it. It seems consistent. It seems appropriate and not too overbearing for those where public safety is, you know, not that critical as if you're down in the density by the Puyallup River. The walk to a hillside is a significant farther distance. So that's my reasoning behind it. I'm open to council discussion or thoughts, but that was my best way of trying to show fairness, safety, and consistency with this particular ordinance.
Okay. Councilmember Whitting, you second that motion. Feel free to speak.
Yes, I have a similar concern about the Lahar zone. It's a safety issue for our citizens. They don't happen very often, and either here or any place else in the world. So there isn't much data on these, but in many ways, the Lahar is similar to a forest fire, and it gives people a certain amount of notice. So when my parents happened to live in Paradise, California, so I was very much attuned to the campfire that took place there and some of the fires down in California, and the residents had noticed that the fire was headed their way, and they wanted to get out of town. And in doing so, a lot of them found that getting in their cars and driving out of town wasn't an option because there were relatively few roads that quickly became congested. So you know, this is a concern for me. If the Lahar sirens go off and everybody jumps in their car and tries to get out of town, it's going to be a mess. But I think if we study it and develop plans that we can communicate to our citizens, and then we can reduce the loss of life dramatically. So while I'm seconding Councilmember Johnson's amendment here, I would also suggest that as part of our comprehensive plan that we should add a provision in there to study the effects of a Lahar on our city and figure out how to get as many people safely out of the valley floor, which is the Lahar zone, as possible, and how we can train our citizens, help our citizens to avoid loss of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? I will provide some comment. Lahars are actually happen every 500 to 1,000 years. The last one that occurred in this area was over 500 years ago. The USGS estimates that it's approximately 15% chance of this happening in the next 75 years. So I know we have individuals who believe that it's many years beyond that. It's actually much more of a salient issue than many may think. In fact, it was this area that was featured on the cover of Popular Mechanics with some of the best geologists in the United States saying that this was a hazard that we need to pay attention to. And even in our own statute or code, we say that it's equivalent to a roughly 100-year flood. And they made that estimate, I think, 30 years ago. We do have lahar sirens in the valley. I was partly responsible for getting those when I was in the state senate. And those are in the Ording Valley too. And I believe those are the only areas in Washington state that have these lahar sirens, given that a person may only have 45 minutes at the least warning to go ahead and to go to a place of safety. Now, this has happened in other parts of the world. There was a South American country, South American city of a similar population, similar vicinity to a volcanic mountain as we are, and they suffered severe fatalities, even though they were given a 2-week warning in that case. So I agree, Councilmember Whitting, we need to better train. But keep in mind that last March 2024, we had the world's largest lahar evacuation exercise. 45,000 students were evacuated during that time. Back in the 2000s, early 2000s, the city council was much more engaged on this issue, and they sequestered the city council, and they actually held a mock eruption, and they went through what a lahar would do to this area. It was pretty devastating. So I think we owe it to future generations to keep an eye out for them. That's why I applaud major developments on major arterials, so that people have the ability to go ahead and to go onto a main arterial and evacuate. But when you get into the neighborhoods, it gets far more complex. And that's why actually the amendment that Councilmember Johnson has put forward is reasonable. I think that a half a mile is a reasonable distance. I am very, very concerned about the 54 different assisted living facilities we have in Puyallup and the ability for people to evacuate. So believe it or not, I've lost some sleep over that one, and I'll probably lose more because how we evacuate those people, it's going to take some thought and how we're going to make that happen. But I do believe, I'm a hiker, grew up a hiker, and I usually do about a 4-minute mile, roughly, is what you look at, a mile every 15 minutes. But an elderly person, that can go all the way down to, that can go more than a half hour just for actually just 2 miles an hour. So maybe 30 minutes, something in that range. I think that a half mile is a distance that would give them 15, 20 minutes that I think is reasonable for people of all ages to cover and to get to an area of safety. So I think it's a wise amendment, and it speaks to the concerns we have here in the Valley. And so I will support it. And with that, if there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 1 nay and 6 yay. Okay, we'll now move to the underlying motion. And the underlying motion is as was presented. And is there any further discussion? Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Katie, I have a question for you. Certainly, Puyallup is not the only municipality, city, land that is in the lahar zone. Are you aware of any other municipalities in the area that are considering a similar lahar, the volcanic hazard area as defined and designated in Chapter 21?
I am not aware of any. I will also say that many of the surrounding cities that are also in the lahar zone are smaller cities, and they're not subject to the same specific requirements that a city of our size is subject to in response to House Bill 1110.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Katie, don't sit down. So our current code restricts Lahar's, I don't know if you can answer this, and it might be a Joe question, but currently what it entertains is only buildings with 1,000 or more people. Do you know when that code was adopted?
Our current critical area ordinance was adopted largely in its current form in 2006. We have made minor updates since then, but I don't believe we've updated anything substantive in relation to that regulation.
So the previous councils and the current code, again, is anticipating the concerns with high density, with lots of people. So this code, if you go along East Main, or even just downtown, we have large areas of RM20. Are we doing anything with that code? Does this ordinance do anything to the RM20 zone?
This ordinance does not.
Okay, so I looked today just along the river. So the River Trail Apartments has 28 units. The Riverside Park Apartments has 379 units. Linden Lane Apartments has 254. Crossroads Apartments, 126. So all of these units border the river, or these complexes border the river, which is the most dangerous area for residents in a lahar. It is going to travel down the river. The average for Washington State occupancy of of apartments is 2.08 people. So we have allowed 1,634 residents on average in these 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units directly next to the river, which we are saying is our concern. Some of these units I went and I drove some of them today, and it is not that easy. If you you take Riverside that has 379 units and multiply that out, have all those people try to get out of that area, even though it's on East Main. So I cannot support this ordinance. It doesn't make any sense to me because I struggle to understand how a duplex or something that has 8 units, I don't care, some of this really small scale is more concerning than the RM20 zone that we currently have and allow and are not addressing in this code. So that it doesn't make any sense to me that our mother-in-law unit is more problematic than units with RM20. And then the city just sold 2 properties for development, and we have added Palindrome, 115 units, 7 townhomes, and Urban Olympia, 138. So if we are that concerned about the valley floor, we added 260 more units, used the same math, it's 540 more people. So I can't support this ordinance because it does not make sense. We are limiting mother-in-laws, but not practicing what we preach, and we have a lot of people at risk next to the river. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, I just want some clarity. The passage that just took place by the council, was that to the amendment or to the first reading of the motion?
No, that was passing. That was passing your amendment.
Okay, so amendment. Now we're discussing the
underlying motion.
Okay,
that you originally
for the first reading.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to make sure. I thought so, but I want to make sure we're on the same page. Thank you. That's all I had.
I would. The mayor would like to respond to the arguments made by Councilmember Dorr. Actually, people have maybe it's a misnomer, but the river is not the concern. In a lahar, the entire valley is. You're looking at 20 to 30 feet of mud coming down. Yes, the river is a concern for flooding, etc., but the entire valley is a concern. Plus, all of those developments are very close to Meridian, the one down here, close to where I live. I live right next to the river. I believe that I'm at greater risk only because of some flooding that will come up But the fact of the matter, during the lahar, the entire valley is at risk. So that is not, it's not true that be living next to the river in the case of a lahar is going to be any really more dangerous. It's just trying to evacuate from that distance. Now, as to Palindrome and the other development lots that we have, they're in our downtown core with main arterials that will very easily allow evacuation either to the north or the south, but assuming the person will go to the north. So that is also part of the strategy we need to integrate, is we have to put developments on our main arterials. Grayland Park, for example, across the street, there's a development going in there, and that's right on 2nd. And 2nd, again, is a main arterial. I would argue that when you look at the kind of density that is in House Bill 1110, we're talking about streets where you could have potentially have up to, 10, 12 cars for a residence because it doesn't require any parking. It doesn't have parking requirements on residential streets. You can imagine the type of congestion you're going to get on these very small streets like mine, 8th Avenue, 7th Avenue. They cannot handle that level of density. And I think that's the issue, is whether the infrastructure can handle that. A strategy is that we are assured, probably fairly well assured, that our main arterials can handle that. That's why I think this amendment's fine. Also, a strategy that we should address in the comprehensive plan is that we do, again, focus those larger developments on main arterials. Councilmember Whitting.
I just have to express a little concern here that, we don't really know what the traffic flow is going to look like. I have doubts about whether or not our major arteries are going to flow during this kind of an event, because all those little streets are going to fill up with cars, and they're all going to want to get on the major thoroughfares to get out of town. So we don't have the data to make wise decisions on this. So I am going to support this amendment as an interim measure, which it is, but I think we need to do more study and address the concerns that have been expressed by my colleague, Councilmember Dorr, and some of my own concerns about the access. But I don't think we have the data to do that today. But again, as part of the comp plan, I think we need to address that and make sure we have the data to study before we adopt a permanent code and really potentially adjust our existing code if such is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, if there is no further discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. It's noted that the vote is 5-2 on that. Okay, now let's move to 5B. First reading of an ordinance to amend titles 11, 14, 20, and 21 of the Puyallup Municipal Code.
All right. Good evening. My name is Nabila Comstock. I am a planner with the Development and Permitting Services Department. Tonight, I'll be presenting the City Council with the ADU ordinance for first reading and their consideration. House Bill 1337 was passed in 2023 with the purpose of expanding housing options and easing barriers to the construction and use of ADUs. The purpose of the code amendments is to align the city's existing ADU standards with the state requirements, close regulatory gaps, and simplify and streamline our current regulations. The changes to our code are to be adopted no later than June 30th of this year, and there is no model or ordinance of ADUs for us to use. So if the code is not adopted by then we will apply the rules of the associated RCW. In May, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the code amendments, during which they provided a recommendation to forward to City Council being presented tonight. So with the changes to state law, we have new requirements, which include allowing 2 ADUs in all zones that allow for single-family residences, eliminating owner occupancy requirements, allowing a maximum size of 1,000 square feet per ADU, modifying ADU design standards for building entry and scale, or bulk and architecture, and revising setback standards for ADUs on alleyways, as well as eliminating parking requirements within half a mile of the sounder station. So our municipal code currently requires ADUs to be jointly metered with the single-family home and does not allow them to be segregated in ownership from the principal dwelling unit. The new legislation requires us to allow ADUs to be sold separately from the principal unit as a condominium unit. So this shift has prompted us to revisit our utility metering standards. To implement these changes, and after consulting with Public Works and Engineering, we've developed a new approach. Detached ADUs will now be required to have a separate water service pipe and meter from the principal dwelling unit, and attached ADUs may continue to share the same service and meter as the principal dwelling unit. Language has also been added to the streets and sidewalks chapter that frontage improvements will not be required as a condition of approving ADUs in order to meet the state requirements. These updates align our current local regulations with the state law and provide clearer standards for future development. So to improve clarity and consistency in our code, the Planning Commission has recommended updates to the definitions of accessory building, accessory dwelling unit, and floor area. These changes are intended to clarify vague language and more clearly differentiate accessory buildings from ADUs. There are also 2 definitions being introduced. One of those is independent cooking, which was at the request of Planning Commission to clarify its use in the updated definition of ADU, as well as the adoption of the new definition of major transit stop. So the legislation also requires cities to allow at least 2 ADUs on all lots in zoning districts that allow for single-family homes, and to allow an ADU on lots that meet the minimum lot area for the zone. Our code currently allows for 1 ADU per lot, but with direction from the Commission, is recommended to meet the requirement of the legislation, and for lots that don't meet the minimum area for the zone, to allow for 1 ADU in any configuration, and up to 2 ADUs in certain configurations, which include 2 attached or detached stacked units, 1 detached unit and 1 attached unit, or the conversion of an existing structure and the addition of a new unit. This recommendation from the Planning Commission is more permissive than the minimum legislative requirement for quantities of ADUs. Our code also currently sets a maximum of 2 bedrooms for ADUs. Planning Commission has recommended retaining this existing maximum of 2 bedrooms per ADU. However, staff's recommendation, based on analysis of the state law regarding ADUs, is that there should be no bedroom limitation. The intent is that ADUs should be treated generally the same as the principal dwelling unit. Regarding size, the legislation requires the allowance of ADUs to be up to 1,000 square feet in floor area per unit, and the amended code is proposed to meet this requirement. Regarding design and sale, so setbacks, entry door location, aesthetic requirements, and design review for ADUs cannot be more restrictive than for the principal dwelling. As such, the design of ADUs is now to be compatible with the design standards of the principal dwelling unit, and entry door location requirements are proposed to be removed. Currently, ADUs cannot be segregated in ownership from the principal dwelling, and the owner must live on the lot at least 6 months of the year. However, to meet the state law, the requirement for owner occupancy is removed, and the allowance for ADUs to be sold or conveyed as condominium units has been added. The Planning Commission has recommended increasing the setback between detached ADUs and principal structures on the same parcel from 5 feet to 10 feet due to fire safety concerns. Staff met with Central Pierce Fire and concurred with this recommendation. This recommendation from the Commission is not a requirement from the legislation since the existing setbacks meet the requirements of the legislature. Regarding parking, the state requirement is to remove parking requirements for ADUs within half-mile walking distance of a major transit stop, to require no more than one space per unit on lots less than 6,000 square feet, and to require no more than 2 spaces per unit on lots greater than 6,000 square feet. The Planning Commission recommendation is consistent with this requirement, but does provide more specifications for lots greater than 6,000 square feet. That would be to only require 1 space per unit if it is a studio or 1-bedroom unit, and to require 2 spaces per unit for 2-bedroom units. Other amendments include updates to the non-conforming code to include the required allowance for the conversion of existing structures that are non-conforming as to setbacks or lot coverage to be able to be converted to ADUs, as well as a minor update to our park impact fee code to just amend the section to accurately reflect the new ADU size requirements. As outlined in the staff report, the proposed municipal code text amendments were found to be consistent with the goals and policies of the city's comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission has forwarded a recommendation to approve the municipal code amendments as shown in the ordinance, with the request for staff to revisit impact fees, lot coverage, and floor area standards later this year. Staff concurs with Planning Commission's recommendation with the amendment to remove the 2-bedroom maximum for consistency with the legislative intent. At the May 20th meeting, Council did request that staff present options for ADU recommendations where there were options to vary from the recommendation. Those have been outlined on this slide. For bedrooms, the Commission recommended retaining the existing maximum of 2 bedrooms per ADU. Again, this is not a requirement of the legislation, and staff recommends there be no bedroom limitation. For quantity of ADUs, we are required to allow ADUs on lots meeting the minimum lot area. The recommendation is to allow 1 ADU on lots that are not meeting the lot area with the possibility of 2 ADUs in specific configurations. For setbacks, they cannot be more restrictive than they are for the principal unit. Our code currently meets this requirement, but the Commission did recommend a 10-foot separation between detached ADUs and other dwelling units on the same parcel. And lastly, for parking, we cannot require more than 2 spaces per unit on lots greater than 6,000 square feet, and the Commission meets this requirement but does provide more specification for number of bedrooms. So tonight, Council's action for first reading is to consider the first reading of the ordinance, followed by the decision on adoption of the amendments to the city's ADU regulations consistent with House Bill 1337. And that's all for my presentation.
Okay, are you available for questions?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some questions from staff, whoever would like to address this. Hypothetical scenario, let's say that the council decides to pass, at least in a majority sense, this item 5B. If I understand correctly, is there any connection to the amendment and the motion that passed on 5A that would be applicable to the standards and exceptions and acceptance on this item for 5B?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll answer that question. So there is nothing written into the ADU ordinance that currently mirrors what Council just adopted for item 5A. That could be an amendment proposed by you tonight, and we would incorporate that prior to second reading. But as it currently states only the basic critical area, we wouldn't allow an ADU on a wetland or a stream, but that additional LAHAR regulation does not currently exist in the ADU ordinance.
So, okay, so that's helpful. My assumption is that would be applicable if there's exceptions on the 1110. This might be the same on the bill 1337. If that's the case, I guess I would open up to council, should we consider the adoption in the applicable 1/2 mile perimeter to be applicable to those within 1/2 mile of the, if it's a LAHAR safety issue, should we also apply that to the ADU restrictions and acceptance on this particular amendment or ordinance before us might be a subject. So I'd like to open it up. I'm inclined to make an amendment, the same amendment, to be applicable to 5B as well. So those that are within that 1/2 mile buffer to an elevation could adopt these full force as expressed in House Bill 1337, and those that are not within there would be exempt to those increased standards based off of the safety of the LAHAR evacuation. So, Mayor, unless I'm understanding correctly, I think I'd like to go ahead and make an applicable amendment that we did on the first one to item 5B as well.
Okay.
Would I first need to make a motion on 5B?
No, you're correct. You would have to make a motion to adopt an ordinance to amend titles, et cetera, 11, 14, 12, 20, 21, municipal code. Mm-hmm. Make that motion and then propose that amendment to effectuate that. That's completely allowable within the statute.
Yeah, I think that should. I'll speak to that. So I'll speak to why am I thinking, which I've kind of explained. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the first reading of the ordinance. It's located and expelled out in 5B, as stated, and then if there's success on that, I'll make a separate amendment.
The motion has been made for first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Now, Councilmember Johnson, you can put forward that amendment.
Yeah, I think in this. Well, I'll make a motion to adopt the same amendment that I articulated in item 5A to be applicable to 5B, and so that would be my motion. Then I'd like to speak to it if there is a second.
There's a motion on the floor, or there's an amendment on the floor.
This is the amendment. Okay, that amendment's before us. Is there a second? I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Johnson, if you want to speak to the amendment.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that this amendment to item 5A would apply to 5B, and I think it's probably good to, I guess, apply it here. If this issue of high density and public safety for LAHAR is acceptable and appropriate for 5A under the conditions, it should be consistent within 5B as well. And then those properties that are outside of that LAHAR zone of a 1/2 mile should be opened up to the higher density middle housing. And so I think it's consistent and true to the intent of public safety. So that's my thinking. I'd love to get other feedback and perhaps entertain a motion to pass this.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Councilmember Whitting.
I just had a question about setbacks. My understanding here is that our existing code includes a 5-foot setback from other structures, and the Planning Commission is proposing a 10-foot. So it's making it, our code is making it more restrictive as opposed to less restrictive. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so thank you for that.
Okay.
And well, actually, just as a follow-on there, I'm not sure exactly what we've got a number of options on the table here, and I'm not sure what options are included in this code section. You've got I'm looking at the slide that says City Council alternatives.
Sure.
Is the motion that we have before us including which alternatives are included in the motion?
So the motion would be to accept the recommendation as proposed. That slide was included because at the last meeting it was requested to show, what is actually required by the state law versus what the Planning Commission is actually recommending. So if council does want to vary from the recommendation of Planning Commission, we can take a look at that.
Okay, so could you summarize which of these alternatives before us were included in the Planning Commission recommendations?
Yes. So for the bedrooms, the Planning Commission recommendation was to retain the existing maximum number of bedrooms at 2 bedrooms per ADU. And then staff's recommendation was to remove a bedroom limitation. For the...
Well, let me intervene there. So which one of those alternatives is in this proposal?
In the proposal is the, in Planning Commission's proposal, it is to retain the existing maximum of 2 bedrooms per
So
ADU.
the Planning Commission trumps, so to speak, the staff recommendation. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So when you're hearing these, council member, if she says that the commission did something, assume that that's in this proposal.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Okay.
The other item was regarding the quantity of ADUs. The state law requires us to allow ADUs on lots meeting the minimum area for the zone. And the recommendation is to allow 1 ADU on lots meeting the minimum lot area for the zone, with the possibility to allow for 2 ADUs in specific configurations. So the Planning Commission's recommendation is if the lot is not meeting the minimum area for the zone that it is in, they can only have 1 ADU, or they can have 2 if they are in specific configurations.
So just to clarify my understanding, that the requirement is to allow 2 ADUs on lots meeting the minimum area. So the recommendation for 1 ADUs is for lots that are not included in the. You're addressing a condition that is not addressed in the legislation.
Correct.
Okay, good. Proceed.
Okay. And then for setbacks, we cannot establish setbacks that are more restrictive than they are for the principal dwelling unit. Our code currently meets this requirement of the state law. However, Planning Commission had concerns about fire safety, so they requested, or they are recommending, a 10-foot separation between detached ADUs and other dwelling units on the same parcel. So the recommendation from Planning Commission here is to increase the 5-foot setback between ADUs and other structures to now be 10 feet between detached ADUs and other dwelling units on the parcel.
But on the parent parcel, there's still a 10 foot between adjoining parcels. The 5 foot would only apply within the parcel.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The 5 foot setback between ADU and other structures applies within the parcel.
Yes.
But between parcels, we've still got a larger
Correct.
setback.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Well, if I'm correct, between parcels is 5 feet and 5 feet.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Yes,
So it would be the same.
Sorry about that. The setback for ADUs on rear and interior side yard property lines is 5 feet.
now I'm
No,
confused.
let me correct that. I believe you said that the ADU to the main unit setback is 10 feet.
Yes.
However, the normal setbacks between the main unit and the property line are 5 feet. But if you think about that, it's 5 feet on the other side, which gives you 10 feet.
Yes.
Okay, so the ADU and the main structure is only 5 feet, whereas there's a 10-foot total between major structures on adjoining parcels.
No. The ADU, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the ADU on the piece of property is 10 feet from the primary structure. Okay?
Correct.
However, the primary structure still has the normal, when it comes to property lines, has the more normal distance requirement of 5 feet.
Yes, so I'm was really talking to the option 1 there. between the ADU and the other structures on the property. So
Right, I understand.
So the ADU can be 5 feet from the main building.
I think the thinking there, though, is that the firefighters usually want that requirement to go in between structures, and it creates a 10-foot distance for houses. And since these are living structures, although on one piece of property, they're nevertheless living structures, and they want that 10 feet.
Yeah, so has the Central Pierce weighed in on this one?
Yes, we did meet with Central Pierce, and they agreed on the 10-foot separation.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Parking?
Yes. And then for parking, we cannot require more than 2 spaces per unit on lots greater than 6,000 square feet. And the Planning Commission recommendation is to meet this requirement, but they establish more specificity, so they would only require 1 space per ADU if you have a studio and 1 bedroom, and 2 spaces per ADU if you have a 2-bedroom unit.
Okay, so I understand that these pretty well at this point. So in our motion, I would like to propose picking and choosing between some of these options. So for myself, I would, on bedrooms, I would, again, we're in a position now where we've got a motion and amendment, and I'm looking at proposing additional amendments. So
Correct.
I'm a little bit fearful of doing that.
No, don't be. Well, let's pass, or let's address the amendment that's before us, and then you are free. After that, we now have the body before us, and the body is this with the commission recommendations, and we are amending it. I have an amendment by Councilmember Johnson right now to apply the same standards we did with House Bill 1110 to this particular piece of legislation. That was moved, so was seconded. And so we will now, if there's no further discussion on that, we will vote on that, and then we will move on to any further amendments, and you can make 10, 15 amendments. We're here all night. I'm not really. Well, in case, whatever. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just for clarity, again, I've always tried to apply it as a recent, especially when we're talking about, some broad and public safety issues and adoption to the state bills that are directed to us. So hypothetically, again, if this bill or this motion passes with the amendment, the adoption of the Planning Commission that is before us, from the existing ADU allowances that we have currently, this, if I understand correctly, not getting into specifics, would significantly expand the footprint and options and expense for middle housing and even condominium to sell if that passes. So that's a significant expansion. Is that fair to say that this now expands this opportunity for true middle housing at a lower cost with, fees and all that stuff? It just seems like it's an immediate boost. And assuming that the amendment goes through, stepping back from that a moment, even if this passed, this would not be applicable, unless I'm correct to tell me, this would not expand ADUs in areas that already have HOAs. Is that correct, or would this now infiltrate HOAs that are existing?
So my understanding is that if you have an existing HOA that does not allow for ADUs, they would not be required.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're still, in a sense, exempt from this. And assuming that the amendment passes to this particular first reading, the group, the half a mile radius all the way around the base of the valley, this expanded option would be applicable to be applied to those units as well, based off of the same criteria then. Okay, good. Well, I'm satisfied. I wanted to say before we go to the vote, I know this ADU for some folks, including myself, at times is a little bit, the sky is falling kind of concept. But as I'm reading it and looking at the intention of what could happen here, I see a lot of our children being able to afford to buy a place connected to our lot on a kind of a family homestead that could be deeded off and sold to them prior to passing or after passing. It goes back to the organic kind of the family gathering, living on a homestead. Now, again, that may be far-fetched, and it may not be how it's going to be applied in the real world. I don't know, but there are many families who, and I think Councilmember Dore made a really good comment, the mother-in-law apartment. It's kind of designed for friends and family and maybe a little income, generation for the single mom or whatever. It just seems like there's a lot of property rights that are able to be exercised in a responsible way, and also providing lower entry-level housing who may want home ownership and or income for those that are maybe on a fixed income that may can't afford to live in their house after they retire because of fixed income. But if they put a little ADU on there, now they've got a chance to make a little income where a grandma or grandma can have grandpa have a little income. So I really like the intent of it. I am in good faith going to believe that while not perfect, I think if implemented, I think it's going to be a real boost to our city in those areas that, again, are outside of the public safety of Lahar. So I'm fully in support of this, and quite frankly, excited to see a careful and crafted implementation of this, because I think it's going to open up a lot of doors for people to really be able to live in our city and enjoy the things that we get to enjoy, but at a much more affordable level. So I'm pretty excited about this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Whitting.
Sorry to be taking so many bites out of the apple here, but I just wanted to second what Councilmember Johnson just said. This legislation coming out of the state is intended to generate more housing and more affordable housing in the process. And I think that's a worthy goal. I think we definitely need more affordable housing in our area. So the intent from the state, though, maybe a blunt instrument, and we might have crafted it differently here at the city level. I think the intent is good, and it's up to us to try and make it work as well as it can in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will go to a vote on the amendment. I would like to just add some words that I think the amendment is appropriate, especially when you look at the 0 parking requirements that would be throughout a major part of the valley, that area which is the furthest from the hillside and which will increase density with no parking requirements. You could see very, very easily, just do a little simple math, you could see 4 to 6 additional cars on the street in front of every home or more. So I think the amendment is appropriate. Having said that, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of Councilmember Johnson's amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, I believe that is a 5-7. I stand corrected. Please let me know.
5-2, Mr. Mayor.
5-2, excuse me. Oh, sorry. I don't know what I was thinking there. 5-2. With that, we'll now move on to further amendments. Councilmember Whitting.
Thank you. Looking at the alternatives, I would like to amend the proposal, and I'm not sure what's in the proposal entirely. I understand the alternatives now, but I'm not sure which is in and which is out, so I'm going to amend the proposal, and you can slice and dice it as appropriate, but take the staff recommended bedroom maximum proposal as opposed to the Planning Commission. The one ADU, I would pass on I would take the allow up to 2 ADUs on lots meeting minimum area and leave it at that. 10-foot separation, and then the parking 1 space per ADU and 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom ADU proposal. So is that clear?
Well, Councilmember Whitting, we could do what's called divide the question. And if you want to take each of those one at a time, as opposed to putting them all into one amendment, that might be simpler considering
I will
how many you
accept
have.
that recommendation. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I interject just for, before we move, I'm happy to entertain it, but just for the clarity, now that we've passed this amendment and this first reading of motion, could staff just quickly bullet point tell us what we've already passed so that we know that any changes that might be split the question or coming up, what is being considered to be changed? So the issues, might be a good idea just to list those.
Well, the changes that they told us about, every time they said the commission voted, that is the proposal.
Right.
The recommendation. Your amendment just said
Adopted the commission.
Your amendment said that applies, whatever we're going to discuss here, applies from 100 feet, half a mile from the base of the hillside. So we're now discussing that.
Oh, I don't think we're discussing that, Mr. Wright. I think what we're discussing, correct me if I'm right, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So the Planning Commission said up to, I think, 2 bedrooms and 5 foot. I just want to know which one, can we list those out right now so we know? And then if Councilor Whitting wants to say, hey, I want to go from unlimited bedrooms to 3 bedrooms, at least we know what we're comparing it to. There's basically just 3 options, right? We're talking about, Councilor Whitting, you're talking about 3 different considerations of changes.
Okay, let's deal with this categorically.
Yeah.
Let's deal with the issue setbacks. What does the bill currently say with setbacks?
Okay, so the House bill?
The bill that we have before us right now.
We passed.
The ordinance. Okay.
Sorry, I apologize.
The ordinance, Planning Commission recommends a 10-foot separation between detached ADUs and other dwelling units on the parcel.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to address these one at a time, or do we want to go categorically down? Councilmember Johnson?
I like one at a time.
Okay, then let's deal with that then. Okay. Councilmember Whitting, do you have an amendment regarding the bedrooms?
So what's on the table is a 10-foot separation. I would like to keep that, so I have no amendment.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Well, no, I just said bedrooms. That's not 10 foot. There's numbers of bedrooms.
Okay, so we're looking at bedrooms.
Yes.
I would like to take the staff recommendation. I would like to amend the ordinance to accept the staff recommend of striking the bedroom maximum.
Okay, the bedroom maximum is 2. Minimum.
Yes.
Minimum.
No, maximum.
Maximum.
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying no minimum. No maximum.
No maximum.
Okay, that's the amendment. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I'd like to, so the Planning Commission recommended a 2-bedroom maximum. We passed that. That's where we're at now. So now there's a consideration by council to possibly expand that to no bedroom maximum based off of staff recommendation. Again, I'm just hypothetically playing this out, just again trying to think it through. If a person wanted to divide up, it's only up to 1,000 square feet anyway, so it doesn't matter if you fill up your 1,000 square feet with 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms or whatever. You can make your bathroom smaller. The square footage, the footprint's the same.
Correct.
I'm not opposed to expanding it, but I kind of like the idea of just sticking with a 2-bedroom because the intent, if it's kind of a mother-in-law, typically you're not going to have a family living in there, so a young couple with 1 child, grandmother with a spare room makes sense. And then there could be higher density with a 3-bedroom, even though it's the same footprint. I kind of prefer the Planning Commission's deal on this one, but I'm open to council's convincing otherwise. But I think it's fair based off of the intent of kind of a ADU concept as being an extra living space, not necessarily a full-fledged house. So that's my thinking, but I'm open for discussion or convincing on that.
Okay, Councilmember Whitting, you're still up.
My thinking on this is families are different, and if you've got a family of 4 that has or even a family of 3, if there's a single mom that has a 13-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, you're not going to want to put those young people in the same bedroom, so you're going to need 3 bedrooms unless mom wants to sleep with one of the children. And if it's in 1,000-foot, we have homes in Puyallup that are 700 square feet that are, 1,000 square feet is large enough to put 3 bedrooms in. And if you need the 3 bedrooms, then I think the property owner ought to have the right to put 3 bedrooms in to handle those 2 teenage kids. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, here, I believe, did your motion have a second?
I do not believe so.
Okay, then your motion is to not have a maximum, okay? And is there a second on that?
Second.
Sorry about that, that was my error. Should have had a second before discussion. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Johnson.
Well, so the whole cool thing about this council is I think this is kind of a unique deal. I would be willing to support that, Councilor Wedding and Dorr, if you went from 2-bedroom to not unlimited to maybe 3. Because now if somebody wants to do a 6-bedroom, I mean, it's kind of far-fetched, but it could, kind of make more sense if it was go from unlimited to 3. Would that be something you'd be amiable? Because I might get behind that.
Practically speaking, I think it gets pretty hard to put more than 3 bedrooms into a.
Well, right. So why not state it? I guess is the question.
So I don't have a problem with saying 3.
Okay, there's a motion to the amendment to change the number from from unlimited to 3. Is there a second on Councilmember Johnson's to change it to 3?
Or I'm just going to ask for a friendly, amendment to it. Whatever.
Okay,
whatever.
That's fine. We can operate in that realm too. Councilmember Whitting, are you willing to state that as a change your proposal to a maximum of 3 bedrooms?
My preference would be to strike the max.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's rather than amending an amendment and getting all convoluted, let's dispel of this amendment or pass it, one of the two. I will speak against it. I think that having a maximum is a good idea. I think 3 is a good appropriate number, and I'll support that. But right now, we have an amendment before us that says there is no maximum, and you can put as many as you would like. And again, I recommend not voting for that, but let's go ahead and vote right now. Councilmember Johnson, unless you have something else to say?
No, I'll wait for the response to this, and then maybe perhaps ask Councilor Wedding to change that to a 3 for a new amendment.
Okay. With that, all those in favor of this amendment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those against? Nay.
Nay.
I believe the nays have it, unless someone would like to challenge that.
I'm going to withdraw. I don't feel like I have enough time to make this decision.
It needs to have 4 votes to pass, and it doesn't have that I can see.
Do you have a nay?
Again,
I had nay.
Well, I voted no.
I voted no.
We had 4 nays.
Right. Oh, we did.
It needs 4 to
4.
pass.
Okay,
So
but it needs 4 to
definitely
pass. Okay. With that, okay, now we will now dispel that. Now we'll move on to new amendments. Councilmember Johnson.
Well, I'd like Councilor Wedding to go ahead and propose. It was his deal, so if you'd like to propose an amendment that would increase it to 3, I would certainly love to second that for you.
I will offer an amendment to make the maximum 3.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I'm friendly after all.
Okay. I hope we don't need any discussion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, now we're going to move to the area of setback. Okay? The next category.
Yes.
Explain what's in the underlying code.
In the ordinance.
Ordinance.
So in the ordinance, the proposal is to increase setbacks between detached accessory dwelling units and other dwelling units on the parcel to 10 feet.
Okay. Is there any desire or any questions, I guess, first of all, Councilmember Dorr?
Thank you. I have a question because if you look at this slide, you're using setback and separation. So are we talking about something different because the words are different? But it seems like what you're saying now is they are the same. So what are we actually talking about?
I apologize for not using the consistent language. It would be separation from each structure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So right now, currently, it's at 10 feet within from the main unit, and then standard setbacks apply.
Correct.
Understand. So basically, it's 10 feet from everything.
Yes.
Okay. I don't hear an amendment on this, so if there's no amendment, we're going to move up to the next category, which would be parking.
Yes, so for parking, the proposal is to eliminate parking within 1/2 mile walking radius of major transit stops, have one space per unit on lots less than 6,000 square feet, and then the recommendation from Planning Commission is for lots greater than 6,000 square feet to have one space per ADU if they are studios or 1 bedrooms, and 2 spaces per ADUs if they are 2 bedrooms. I would like to add that if we are increasing the maximum to 3 bedrooms, we would still apply 2 bedrooms, two spaces for 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms.
I believe you misspoke, though, in that the First Amendment we dealt with a major transit spot in Puyallup. That's the train station.
Yes.
And so the no parking requirements would no longer apply.
Correct.
Because, okay.
Yeah.
The First Amendment dealt with that. So you now heard the number that is required. Do you want to change that? 2 spaces per ADU.
2 spaces. Oh, are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
No, the Planning Commission recommendation we are comfortable with.
And then that's
1 space for ADUs
with 1 bedroom.
with 1 bedroom, and 2 spaces for ADUs for 2 and 3 bedrooms on lots greater than 6,000 square feet.
Okay. Are everybody okay with that? Okay. Next category. I think quantity, is that a category that we can make a decision on?
You may. We are required to allow up to 2 ADUs on lots meeting the minimum lot area. The Planning Commission recommendation was that if it is not meeting the minimum lot area for the zone, that they would allow for 1 ADU or 2 ADUs if they're in specific configurations.
And that's the way the bill is, the ordinance is.
Yes, correct.
At this point. I've got a bill ordinance code. I've just got to select the right one. Okay. Do we want to change that? Do I hear an amendment? What other categories do we have?
Those are all the categories I had.
Okay. So now we have final passage, assuming that there is no amendments. We kind of went through categorically where I thought there would be amendments. And if there is no further discussion, we're going to go for a final passage on first reading of this ordinance. Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay. The vote, and I'll get this correct, is 6-1. Thank you. Okay. With that, we're now going to move on to the next item on our agenda. 5C is the second reading of an ordinance granting a franchise agreement with Ezzy Fiber Texas, LLC.
I make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to pass this second reading of the franchise agreement with Easy Fiber Texas, LLC.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We will have a a roll count for final passage. Please, Dan, could you do that?
Councilmember Adler?
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King?
Aye.
Mayor Castema?
Aye. Okay, now we'll move on to 5D, second reading of an ordinance granting a franchise agreement with Astound Broadband, LLC. And keep in mind on all of these, our City Attorney Joe Beck is available if you have any questions. Do I have a motion to approve a second reading of the ordinance?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We'll have a roll call. Please, Dan.
Councilmember Adler?
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr? Councilmember Gilliam,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King,
Aye.
Mayor Castema.
Aye. Okay, we'll move on to 5E, second reading of an ordinance granting a franchise agreement with Zayo Group LLC. Do I have a motion to approve the second reading?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Adler,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King,
Aye.
Mayor Castema.
Aye. City Manager's report. We're now going to move on. We've completed all the business. Might I say that I appreciate this discussion. You all handled it extremely well, a very complex issue, and I appreciate the discussion and the willingness to maybe move a couple steps back to move much further forward. So with that, we'll start with the City Manager's report. Steve Kirkley, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Kind of apropos, I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor and Council, there's a designation called AICP, which the planners, many of them have, and I just Googled it. It stands for American Institute of Certified Planners. I think tonight you have taken a step towards getting the AICP designation, and you will continue to next week with the comprehensive plan returning for first reading. That is the main matter that will be before you, and a few other matters we're still working on. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, excellent. We'll start with Councilmember Whitting.
I would just like to give a report on a few activities that shape the South Sound Housing Affordability, Accessibility, Attainability Partners has been some of the things they've been working on. They have established a capital fund that's supported by three municipalities in Pierce County. They've accumulated some cash, and they've allocated $966,000 to a project that is going to move forward. So that's the first time that SHAPE has taken that kind of action, the first time they've had the funds to actually support a project. So that's a major milestone in the life of SHAPE. They've also approved an operating budget up a little over 2%, but the contributions from individual municipalities remains the same as of this moment. The final action on that has not been taken yet, but our dues for the upcoming couple of years would be $13,440.65. If we wanted to withdraw from SHAPE, we would need to do that by June 30th. I would recommend that we continue participating. I think we get good value for the $13,000 that we spend on our dues with them. So that's my SHAPE report. I also wanted to mention a couple of upcoming events that here in Puyallup, hopefully everybody will attend. The 86th annual Meeker Days celebration, June 13th through 16th. We'll have 200 vendors, 3 live stages, a cornhole classic, and an art battle going on at Meeker Days this year. And on the June 27th through 29th, we'll have the 4th annual, comparing these, the 86th annual Meeker Days that started in 1939, just for reference sake. So that's a long-term Puyallup classic. But at the State Fairgrounds, we'll have our 4th annual Taste Northwest, which will have 150 vendors, so almost as many as the 200 at Meeker Days. That will be June 27th through 29th. There'll be live music stages at both Meeker Days and annual Taste Northwest. There'll be a comedy stage at Taste Northwest presented by the Tacoma Comedy Club, and there will be our first annual pickleball tournament. So if you're a pickleball enthusiast, come to the fairgrounds and participate in that. So that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to be upset with my amazing council member for stealing some of my thunder of being part of the Main Street Association board. But I do appreciate the shout out for Meeker Days. So please refer to everything that Councilmember Whitting shared regarding Meeker Days. I'll just go a step further. The next time we meet will be after Meeker Days for our city council's meeting. So I did want to do a shout out to fathers. Happy Father's Day that same weekend, as well as all the high school graduations that will be taking place that very same weekend at our Washington State Fair. So it's going to be a very busy weekend, and Puyallup is going to be rocking. If you need help finding parking, make sure you follow. Now I can do my shout out for the farmers market. If you hit the farmers market on Saturdays and check out the Main Street booth, you'll find one council member, if not Mayor Castema, because he seems to be hitting it pretty good there. But they have flyers that can help you find local attractions as well as local parking spots and when free parking is available, which is pretty much most of the time. You just got to know where to look. Also, I need to do a shout out for our very own Puyallup Public Library. I hope people know this, but if not, I will go ahead and state it now. The Puyallup Library attended the South Sound Business Magazine Awards, and they were named Best Library in the South Sound region. So in our very own city, we have the best library in the South Sound region. So I just wanted to shout out to all the staff. Thank you for helping make Puyallup great. Go Team Puyallup. Thank you, Mayor Castro.
Thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. I appreciate all of my colleagues' enthusiasm over there, but I do want to clarify just for the public, we meet next Tuesday. Study session though, right?
No, that actually has been changed to a regular session.
Everything you said was great. I just don't want people to think they don't have an opportunity to be present. And with all of these two, they are rivaling Deputy Mayor King for the updates, so I'm not going to have anything else. What they said.
Okay, we'll start at the other end. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say a couple things. Thanks to staff for this whole comprehensive plan, this House bill. It's been a little bit of a a lot of winds blowing, and a lot of opinions and considerations. And I would say that ultimately, I think staff, Steve, your staff did a great job on helping council kind of put it together. So thank you for your professionalism and allowing us to press areas that I think are sometimes contentious, but it's important. Also, I thank my colleagues. Tonight we had some different opinions on things, but I didn't sense any hostility. Maybe some disagreements or frustrations or whatever, but no hostility. That's a real testament to, I think, the culture that we collectively have set on the council. Is that we believe in good debate and respectful debate. At the end of the day, the process carries it out, and it's really a testament. I think. Again, I've always felt that local politics, when done right, like this one, is a model for other state and federal electeds to learn how to work together, even though we have disagreements. And then I was going to say, interesting, just a little bit of a personal reflection. I don't know if you can tell, my hair is getting a little bit colored. It's not by dye, it's just happening through the process of maturing. But I don't know if you found that I found as my body tends to mature a little more, parts in the body don't always work as well as it used to be. And so anyway, I had a chance to visit various medical facilities here in our area, and I wanted to do a little shout out to Good Samaritan Hospital. I had to go, recommended to go in the emergency room over the weekend because they had some concerns they wanted to check out. And I never really like going into emergency rooms. It doesn't really excite me. You think about just the whole thing. But man, I'm telling you, their reputation and what they've done over there is pretty impressive. I got to see it firsthand as a patient, and their customer service, their promptness, their professionalism, their thoroughness, and quite frankly, they were pretty speedy and even kind of get me in and out of there. So anyway, a real shout out to the testament of that wonderful establishment that's located right here in our city that very few cities of our size have the opportunity to have a very major hospital unit and, quite frankly, a growing hospital with a new wing coming up they're proposing for added jobs, medical coverage, and care for not only our residents and citizens, but those who are visiting our area to have such a first-class hospital. So a real shout-out to them. And then for those who, believe in prayer, I would appreciate prayer. I've been my balance has been off due to something in my right ear, and so I get this constant sound of bells going off 24/7. It's a little irritating, and my balance is affected. So there are many people who are praying, but I appreciate prayers. I'd like to get over this and continue to grow on strong. So that's it for that. And then I just want to say, Marla, you're amazing. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things I wanted to highlight. Number one, I want to thank the council for the fourth year in a row issuing a Pride Proclamation, and I want to thank the community that came out this evening. I agree with some of the citizen comments that were made this evening regarding what we can do in the future, and I hope that that is a conversation that we can have moving forward in our city. Secondly, I want to thank our VFW Post 2224, as well as the other community organizations, veteran organizations, and service clubs in our community that hosted the Memorial Day Remembrance event the Sunday before Memorial Day, just over a week ago. Appreciated the opportunity to attend and remember and reflect and give thanks and gratitude to all of those that have given their lives protecting our country. And then thirdly, it was announced today by Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland's office that her federal funding request for fiscal year 26, her projects that she will be submitting for the fiscal year 26 budget has been announced, and it appears that the city of Puyallup's request has been included in her overall submission for fiscal year 26, and that is for our Meeker Street Improvement Project. We requested $850,000. She has included that full amount in her request. We are grateful, and we are ever so close to finishing up on that project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues for taking all of the subjects that I was going to be speaking on this evening, so that way I can keep my comments short. So thank you all for all the hard work that you're doing, and thank you to our staff for all the amazing work they're doing as we finish up the 2024 comp plan and all of those special things that go along with it. So I will keep it short and pithy. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, all members. I too probably can't add to what has been said already this evening. I would like to apprise you of a project that I'm working on, actually two projects that I'm working on. One is America 250. I have asked the next mayor, Councilmember Whitting, to join with me on a mayor's commission on America 250 for our 250th anniversary, and that will be July the 4th next year. But it just so happens that I will be working on it diligently for the remainder of the year, and then he will have that up until that point. It's very important that we organize all of the different service organizations, all of the different educational institutions, the businesses, all of the different groups, governments, etc., so that we're all very well coordinated in our efforts, or at least we're aware of what other entities are doing. And we're looking at having a central point at the city where people can go to our website and have something there that they can see what's going on throughout the community to celebrate our 250th anniversary. Frankly, this is going to be very big. I think there's going to be not only the fireworks and things of that sort, but there'll be opportunities for speeches, for bands, for ceremonies of all kinds. And it's going to be very big. And I think that the council should talk about our role in, let's say, the Daffodil Parade for next year and all the various events that take place, trying to tie them in to the 250th anniversary. So that is one thing that I am working on. A second thing is something that's probably more long range, and it's probably, I would say, almost a 50-year project, and that is the South Hill. The South Hill has approximately 64,000 people on it currently. Many of them say they have a Puyallup ad, they say they live in Puyallup, but they really don't. They have just the name Puyallup, but they don't actually reside within the city limits, and they get none of the benefits that the people of the city of Puyallup get. And we are very fortunate with our police department, our parks, our roads, all of that, I believe, is absolutely top notch. But they don't have that. And there is an effort for them to look at incorporation, which I think is very appropriate. It just so happens that an old colleague of mine, the prior senator to where I took his spot in Olympia, Calvin Goings, led the effort on that at one time, and I will try to convene a variety of leaders around that, because I think that they have to get a handle on their growth on the South Hill. There was a document that just came out stating that I believe Pierce County wants to put 94,000 homes in that area in the next 20, 30 years. Keep in mind, right now it's 64,000 people. Can you imagine adding 94,000 homes? And let's multiply that by 2.3, whatever the average household would be. We're talking, really tripling the population at least of that area, because that's an additional 200,000 people. And that cannot accommodate that, at least not under its current structure. So that is an effort that I am going to diligently work towards. My philosophy as mayor, and I've told this to other mayors, is that the stronger the cities around me are, the stronger we are in Puyallup. I work with the mayor of Edgewood, I work with Sumner. I really believe that if they are strong, we are stronger. The South Hill, however, is unincorporated. They have no real cohesive governing entity up there. They do have a sense of identity, by the way, and it's not Puyallup. Out of college, I actually had a home up there briefly before I ended up moving back to my family house in the valley. But I can tell you that their identity is not the identity of Puyallup, and they need to coalesce around that and form their own government. So I'm working very hard on our options in that, and I would certainly like the influence of this council to use all the influence they have with council members and other government entities out there to let people know that the people up there deserve to determine their own destiny and have their own governance over their own residents. And I think they're of the critical mass where it's appropriate. So with that, I have no further comments. I will say, Councilmember Johnson, you always say hello to Marla. And, well, I'll tell you, she comes up to me at times. And she acknowledges, I've known Marla for years, so I think she very much appreciates that. With that, we're going to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.